As WandaVision ends, Falcon and the Winter Soldier swoops in on serial wings, giving us another good reason to glue our butts to the seat for the next few foreseeable Fridays. And like its predecessor, it is positively packed with little references and Easter eggs for the dedicated Marvel fans. Whether they're hints at future events or simply bonuses for those that know their comics, we here at ScreenRant are more than eager to help you locate them all. So right off the bat, the series introduces Sam's new fan, friend, and partner within the military in a young man named Torres, who aids him on the ground on his missions and even goes off on his own to investigate the Flag Smashers. But Torres isn't some new addition to the show. He's actually the second Falcon. In the comics, when Sam Wilson officially took over as Captain America, Joaquin Torres, who is of Mexican descent, gained bird-like powers when he was genetically spliced with the DNA of Sam's trained Falcon Red Wing by the scientist Carl Malus. But given that Red Wing is an AI drone in the MCU rather than a living Falcon, it's safe to say that his origin story won't be carried over. Plus, while Carl Malus actually already appeared in the Jessica Jones Netflix show, there's still no final word on whether or not these shows are even canon at all. But hey, that doesn't necessarily mean that Torres couldn't somehow end up sporting his own set of wings one day. The newest threat in the show is the rise of a terrorist group calling themselves the Flag Smashers, who believe that the world was better off when half the population was wiped out during the blip, and that the world as a whole would do better without any national borders. In the comics, the Flag Smashers wasn't a group though, but rather the supervillain identity of one man, the Swiss Karl Morgenthau, whose parents were the victim of xenophobic hate crimes, fueling his hate against the concept of nations as a whole. He did, however, lead a terrorist group called Ultimatum at one point. So far, we know very little of the Flag Smasher group or their leader in the show. But Aaron Kellyman is listed in the credits as a character named Carly Morgenthau, making it seem pretty clear that we're going to be dealing with a gender-flipped version of the longtime Captain America villain. Now, this one is hardly hidden, but it's still nice to see. When Sam and Rhodey, who makes a welcome surprise cameo in this series, take a walk through the Captain America Museum and share their experiences as partners of superheroes that are now gone, we see a number of posters from back during World War II on the walls. And among them, we can plainly see the famous front page of the very first Captain America comic book, where the good captain boldly socks Hitler square in the jaw. With the MCU's captain having been used as a mascot first back in the day, the comic actually does exist in-universe, and is certainly a good fit for a museum dedicated to the hero's legacy. After Sam respectfully and graciously gives up the shield, and with it the chance to become the new Captain America, it takes the American government all of 3 seconds to simply hand it over to a brand spanking new captain, much to Sam's frustration. This man is John Walker, and boy, let me tell you, the dude has quite a past in the comics. He was introduced as a super villain called the Super Patriot, who was originally created to symbolize the dangers of nationalism, as opposed to Steve Rogers' more idealistic take on American values. He did actually take over as Captain America for a while in the comics as well, only to later take on the moniker of US Agent when Steve reclaimed the title. With John Walker being a more conservative and often more violent character than Cap and his partners, his appearance is sure to cause more than just a little bit of tension. Did one of those kidnappers at the beginning of the episode look familiar to you by any chance? Well, he should, because that is none other than our good old friend Georges Batroc, known better in the comics as Batroc the Leaper. Once again attempting to hijack a military vehicle, just like the last time we saw him, which was, fittingly enough, back in Captain America Winter Soldier. Fans of Batroc are likely to be extra delighted when they notice that his outfit has gotten a little more colorful this time around. He's sporting the occasional splash of purple and yellow, which are the trademark colors of his hilariously garish outfit from the comics, where he's more of a showboating, arrogant savant master just in it for the money, and for the chance to enjoy a good fight with the captain and his partners. Time will tell if he's in the employ of some of the series' bigger scope villains this time, however. Torres at one point states that there are people out there who think Captain America is simply hiding on a secret moon base. While this just sounds like a funny little Elvis Lives style gag, he's not completely wrong. In the comics, the Avengers have had space stations at their disposal, most recently one called the Lighthouse, which served as the base of operations for a Steve Rogers-led group of heroes called the Secret Avengers. which consisted of Captain America, Black Widow, Moon Knight, Ant-Man, War Machine, Nova, a Valkyrie named Brunhilde, and even Beast of X-Men fame. With the approximately thousands of other TV shows and movies on the way, several of which will be starring these particular characters, it's probably safe to assume this is a deliberate shout-out. Bucky has a lot of baggage. There are a lot of bodies out there with his name on them, and his tenure as Winter Soldier ensured a lot of bad people came into positions of great power, which we see results in him keeping a list of people he has to take down to make amends for his crimes. Yeah, not quite as fun a list as Cap's pop culture to catch up to one, is it? There are a few obvious candidates on the list, like Zemo, but one name, A. Rostov, sticks out. Andrei Rostov was a KGB officer who served as a warden in a Russian gulag where Bucky spent some time in prison, and was also known under the villainous alias of Red Barbarian. He later met his end getting shot by an unseen sniper, who was quite heavily hinted to be Bucky himself. Wonder if he'll pop up again during the show. It seems somewhat unlikely, but rest assured that we are keeping our eyes peeled. One episode in, 5 more to go, and already things are amping up with the Flag Smashers on the move, Bucky's life being in turmoil, and a new captain entering the scene. And surely there'll be many more Easter eggs to catch on the way. And we're off! Falcon and the Winter Soldier Episode 2 is here, and things are really heating up already. We all know how much Marvel loves to pack its films with references and callbacks and drawing influence from all over the decades-long history of the comics. And while Episode 1 was maybe a little light on the references front, aside from Bucky's list that is, Episode 2 is already picking up the slack. There's a lot of new places, characters, and plot threads to explore, and we're ready to run you all through them. This time, we don't even make it past the episode title before we get to a callback. And while I'm sure you MCU fans out there are familiar, it is probably worth pointing out simply due to the fact that it goes back an entire decade. Yeah, do you feel old yet? 'Cause I sure do. In case you old-timers have forgotten, the Star-Spangled Man that the title alludes to is indeed none other than Steve Rogers, back when he was used largely as a mascot for the war effort. In one of Captain America the First Avenger's best and most well-remembered scenes, Cap is shown starring in movies, having comic books made about him, and making motivational speeches to the troops, all set to the toe-tappingly patriotic number Star-Spangled Man with a Plan. The lyrics to which Lamar even quotes to John, the newly appointed Captain America, when he's trying to give him a little pep talk. I can already hear you out there calling nonsense on me dedicating an entire segment to Sam using Red Wing's cameras to spy on the Flag Smashers. After all, Red Wing is essentially a spy and combat drone, right? Of course it has cameras! Well, yes, obviously, but it's not just a clever use of tech. It's also a more deliberate callback to the comics, where Sam doesn't just get his moniker from his ability to fly. There, he actually has a second superpower, namely a psychic connection with birds, which he uses as a city-spanning spy network. In particular, he uses this ability to quite literally see through the eyes of Red Wing, who, in the comics, is a living, breathing, trained Falcon. Having a sophisticated drone instead of a living Falcon may seem like an upgrade to you, but I imagine the constant tech repairs and general upkeep may make a much bigger dent in Sam's budget than a steady supply of birdseed would. Maybe that's why he couldn't get that loan. There's a pretty humorous moment in the episode when Sam and Bucky encounter a kid who insists that Sam's superhero name has to be Black Falcon. That's a fine joke on its own, but it also has a bit of genre and industry history to back it up. After all, Sam is actually the first black comic book superhero to decidedly not have the word black as part of his name. When black superheroes were starting to get introduced by Marvel and DC during the 60s and 70s, they really wanted you to know their ethnicity, resulting in such famous names as Black Panther in 1966 and Black Lightning in 1977, along with the lesser-known ones such as Black Racer in 71 and Black Goliath in 75. But Marvel introduced Sam in 1969 with the word black nowhere in his superhero alias, and quickly followed it up in 1971 with Luke Cage, known then as Power Man. So, sorry kid, you basically couldn't be more wrong if you tried. The nickname White Wolf, which Bucky earned while he stayed in Wakanda, is brought up again in this episode. But it's actually kind of an odd choice of a name for him, considering there does exist a White Wolf in Marvel Comics who has absolutely nothing to do with Bucky. White Wolf was a white man named Hunter who was adopted by King T'Chaka when his parents died in a plane crash before T'Challa was even born. Being met with scrutiny from the native Wakandans, Hunter knew that with T'Challa's birth, he would never be king of Wakanda like he felt he should. Instead, he eventually became the White Wolf, a mercenary and frequent enemy of T'Challa who wishes to claim the title of Black Panther for himself, seeing it as rightfully his. Now, I don't see Bucky attempting to take that throne anytime soon, so let's just chalk it up to being another cool nickname to go with the Winter Soldier. At the start of the episode, the newly appointed Captain America, named John Walker, gives an interview in the Custer's Grove High School Stadium, and we soon learn that this is actually his hometown. And sure enough, that's correct. It's also the town where John had one of his first missions as Captain America in the comics, tasked with taking down an extremist right-wing terrorist group called the Watchdogs, who claimed to be upholding traditional American values in the worst ways possible, despite John admitting that he actually shared some of their views. To make things extra interesting, the Watchdogs were actually secretly funded by Red Skull in the comics, who also had some influence over Ultimatum, the organization that operated under orders from the Captain America villain Karl Morgenthau, known as the Flag Smasher. I don't see that happening in the MCU, though. Transferring funds all the way from Vormir seems like kind of a hassle. No captain without his Bucky. John Walker doesn't just come equipped with Steve's old shield, but also his very own sidekick, although he identifies himself in this episode as Battlestar rather than Bucky. In the comics, Lamar Hoskins used to work for a group called the Bold Urban Commandos, the Buck-E's for short, who would stage attacks on John back when he was still a villain known as the Super Patriot, all in an effort to strengthen his nationalistic brand. After John became the official captain, he requested that the Buckies keep working for him, but due to the sketchy past of its other two members, Lamar was the only one fit for government work. However, he later learned that Bucky was used as a derogatory term for African Americans, and thus rechristened himself as Battlestar. Hey, you can't really blame him for that one. While on the run after the recent heist, some of Karli Morgenthau's underlings briefly mention a character referred to as the Power Broker, which I'm sure caught a few comics fans' attention. Curtis Jackson, most often referred to as the Power Broker, was a criminal who made a name for himself selling off-brand super soldier serum to those willing to pay, although many who took his deal ended up as deformed monstrosities instead. But if we take a closer look on his list of more successful customers, we find two very interesting names. Those of John Walker and Lamar Hoskins, who went to him back in the Super Patriot era. This is especially interesting since, on top of the Flag Smashers seeming to have super strength themselves, John claimed during the interview earlier in the episode that he has no superpowers to speak of. Is it possible that he's lying through his teeth and knows more about the trafficked serum than he lets on? Knowing his history in the comics, I wouldn't put it past him. During the episode, Bucky decides to introduce Sam to an old, friend of his, Isaiah Bradley, the secret black Captain America that nobody knew existed. Well, he does. In the comics, Isaiah was one of 300 African American soldiers used as guinea pigs in an attempt to recreate the super soldier serum, and sadly, the only one of the bunch to survive. Stealing a Captain America outfit and a shield, he then joined the fight in Europe, but was branded as a traitor for doing so and served 17 years of jail time for his efforts. Things seem to have gone a little differently for him in the show, however, where he's stated to be a Korean War veteran who battled Bucky at some unspecified point in time and ended up serving a whopping 30 years in jail. And unlike in the comics, where despite his secrecy to the public, he became a legend and a highly respected figure in the black superhero community, he has remained completely unknown to the entire world all this time in the show proper. No wonder the dude is bitter. Oh, and as a bonus, we also meet Isaiah's grandson, Elijah, who, in the comics, becomes the young Avenger known as Patriot. Captains everywhere. More captains, more villains, more mysteries, more. That seems to be the name of the game in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down when it comes to giving us cool little references to find. There's still 4 episodes to go, and many more Easter eggs to hunt down. See you in episode 3, folks. 3 makes half. Tensions are flaring over who Steve's shield rightfully belongs to, old secrets from the past that are being dug up, new enemies taking the stage, and old ones join the fray. By all rights, Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes have plenty on their plate, and so do we, the viewers. Despite how busy they are fighting the good fight, the show is still gracious enough to leave references and Easter eggs all over the place after all. And it would be a shame for us not to eagerly pick them up. Here it is, Madripoor! The country whose name had Marvel fans freaking out when it was first revealed in trailers. But why would Marvel fans be so excited about a random Southeast Asian island? Well, because it's not random. The island city-state of Madripoor is a very important location in Marvel lore, more specifically in relation to the X-Men, as it has been the primary setting for quite a few stories and provided home bases and origins for several characters. Wolverine, for example, called the place home for a while, and even took a lover there named Jessin Hone, also known as the criminal Tiger. It was also under the rule of Ophelia Sarkeesian, better known as the villainous Viper, for a long time. It rests on the back of a giant dragon that Daredevil enemy faction The Hand once tried to reawaken, and it even served as the base of operations for major X-Men villain Magneto when he was housing the time-displaced young versions of the original X-Men from the 60s. Yeah, that's kind of a long story. The point is, Madripoor is a major location in the Marvel Universe, and to see it in the MCU is an absolute delight for fans. One of the criminals Bucky, Sam, and Zemo meet while doing their business in Madripoor is a woman named Selby, and when your job is to look for Marvel Easter eggs, this is where you immediately pause the episode and go Googling. And sure enough, there do exist several somewhat one-note characters by the name of Selby in the comics. But none of them seem to have all that much in common with the character we see here, making the name little more than a sly reference. The two most notable characters it could refer to are Suzanne Selby, who once briefly wielded the as-of-yet not established in the MCU Star Brand power, or the Mutant Liberation Front member going by the codename Selby, who was capable of communicating directly with computers. So, an X-Men character. Madripoor? That's a connection, right? Yeah, no, not a lot of connections to be found to the gray-haired female crime lord we meet in the show, but hey, even small Easter eggs have a right to be found.
If we have to do something about this, I'm the only one who looks like a pimp.
Oh, MCU writers. Even your throwaway jokes are references to infamous comic book retcons. Thank you for giving me so much friggin' work to do. For context, Sam Wilson's comic book origins as the Falcon was as a kind of social worker who took to superheroics simply because it was the right thing to do. At least, until the story from the 70s, written by Steve Englehart, revealed that these were actually fake memories and that Sam was originally a hard-boiled, drug-dealing pimp named Snap Wilson, who the Red Skull had manipulated into becoming a mole to spy on and eventually betray Captain America. To say that fans weren't too fond of this stereotype-laden origin story would be putting it mildly, and the later writer Rick Remender quickly retconned this and made the Snap personality the actual fake memories in a sort of double fake-out. So really, Sam's gaudy outfit in this episode is a quick jab to a writing kerfuffle almost as ridiculous as the outfit itself. Now, whether or not Sam looks like a pimp in his disguise as Madripoor criminal Conrad Mack may be up for debate, but it's an indisputable fact that even a name as minor as Conrad Mack, or as we learn that he is also called Smiling Tiger, is taken from an obscure Marvel Comics villain. In the comics, Conrad Mack was the son of a Vietnam War veteran named Collier Mack, who got involved with the so-called Cult of the Dragon's Breath when he and his unit called the Half-Fulls were stationed in Cambodia. With the cult being located right above a magical dimensional rift that they called the Well of All Things, they had worked for generations to breed a new species of human with extraordinary powers by tapping into the Well's power, and when Collier was coerced into taking one of the Brides of the Dragon's Breath as his lover, she gave birth to Conrad. Born with feral qualities and trained in combat skills by his father, Conrad later became the supervillain known as the Smiling Tiger when one of Collier's old buddies, now calling himself Left Hand, found him and recruited him to be part of the supervillain team The Folding Circle. After a fight with the superhero team New Warriors, the Folding Circle stole an Avengers Quinjet and eventually crash-landed in, where else? Madripoor! And once there, they quickly climbed the ranks in the criminal underworld. Now, I'm not sure how comic book accurate the idea of Mac drinking snake guts is, but to be perfectly frank, I wouldn't put it past the dude who's maniacal enough to call himself Smiling Tiger. While Helmut Zemo did provide Marvel fans with an epic superhero battle royale way back in Captain America's Civil War, it's hard to deny that he himself was also a little bit of a letdown. He just didn't have much in common with the comic book Zemo, who was the son of a noble and former Captain America villain Heinrich Zemo. He was just kind of some dude with a raging hate-on for superheroes. And that's why fans rejoiced when they saw trailers showing Zemo wearing his trademark purple ski mask and big fur-collared coat that are both much more akin to his comic book outfit, though there's no word yet on that golden crown and belt just yet. On top of that, his wealth and noble status has been restored too. The one new addition that doesn't seem to be from the comics is his family butler Oznik, but he's worth noting for a different reason. He is played by none other than Nicholas Pryor, who played a small part in an espionage thriller from 1985 titled, and hold on to your hats now, The Falcon and the Snowman. Anybody on board with Bucky switching codenames? That just ain't superheroics without some mad scientists thrown into the mix, now is it? That super serum the Flag Smashers have taken and that the Power Broker is so eager to get back has to come from somewhere, and after doing a bit of digging in Madripoor, our heroes, and Zemo, eventually trace them back to a scientist named Dr. Wilfred Nagel. Nagel is surprisingly eager to boast that yes, he is indeed the genius that managed to reverse engineer the super soldier serum from the blood of an American test subject. A test subject by the name of Isaiah Bradley, the Black Captain America that was kept a secret from the world for decades. And that is indeed true. Wilfred Nagel and Isaiah Bradley do indeed have a history in the comics. But interestingly enough, their roles have been switched this time. Originally, Wilfred Nagel was hired by the American military to recreate the super soldier serum during World War II while Steve was still an active soldier in the field. And it was him who performed awful experiments on a whopping 300 African American soldiers in order to eventually create Isaiah, the only survivor of the experiments. This time, with Isaiah being a Vietnam War vet and Nagel being a much younger character, it's Isaiah who has essentially created him by giving him the means to recreate super soldier serum and gain some level of power in the criminal underworld. Not that he's gonna be enjoying that or make more super soldier serum anytime soon on account of, Zemo. Obscure villains, characters being brought more in line with their comic book counterparts, and comic book accurate locations? These are the kind of wonderful Easter eggs us comic book nerds live and breathe for. We're halfway through the show now, and there'll surely be more Easter eggs to gobble up in the future. Do the words calm before the storm mean anything to anyone out there? Episode 5 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier may have seemed uneventful, as it largely deals with the fallout of the shocking, violent ending to Episode 4, but it's also making it extremely clear that whenever folks aren't fixing boats or having character-defining heart-to-heart talks, everyone is suiting up for one heck of a finale. And thankfully, this bit of downtime before it all goes down gives us plenty of opportunities to go Easter egg hunting. Surely, I hear you all cry, now that we've had Rhodey, Io, and Sharon, there's no way this show can have more surprise cameos up its sleeve. And to that, I can only say, oh, sweet, innocent summer child. This is the MCU. There are always more. And sure enough, after John Walker gets just about everything stripped from him on account of the, committing a brutal murder in broad daylight on foreign soil while decked in American flag colors thing, in saunters the latest cameo. Once you're done picking your jaw up from the floor at seeing Julia Louis-Dreyfus in an MCU production, you might think that there's something more to her comically long name. And there is. Because that's the name of a comics character who, for a time, went under the less than reassuring moniker of Madam Hydra. Originally a highly regarded S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and even lover of Nick Fury, and even the leader of a squad called the Fem Force, she eventually turned out to be working for Hydra and sabotaging them from within. And then turned out to actually be working for another supervillain organization called Leviathan, screwing out both of her former employers. Supposedly, Valentina was supposed to be introduced in the Black Widow film until, world events changed things around, but her appearance is an interesting surprise either way. Last we checked, Hydra was in shambles in the MCU. So, what exactly is her game here? We might not find out in this episode, but the seed has been sown, and what an entertaining seed it is. What, did you think the show had forgotten about Isaiah Bradley? Oh no, friends. The memory of the war vet that was unjustly erased from history has been nesting in Sam's mind this whole time, and with recent events shaking everything up, he goes to see our grizzled old pal to figure out what exactly he's to do with Steve's shield now that he's taken it back from Walker. And so, a bitter Isaiah takes the time to fill Sam in on his whole story. Which, aside from taking place in a different era and his wife no longer being alive in the MCU, is very, very similar to how things went down for him in the Marvel miniseries that introduced him. That series being Truth, Red, White, and Black, released in 2003, written by Robert Morales. Given that Isaiah's tale, for as bitter as it is and being full of parts Sam does not necessarily agree with, is what ends up spurring him to reclaim the Captain America title, it's probably no coincidence that Truth is also the title of the episode itself. Oh hey, Torres! Almost forgot you were in the show for a second. Comic book fans and inquisitive MCU watchers who looked up his name after the first episode aired already know that Joaquin Torres is a character worth keeping an eye out for in this show for one particular reason. He is the second Falcon in the comics. Aside from being a good friend, colleague, and sidekick in all but title to Sam in the series, however, not much had been done to set up this later superhero career until this episode, when John Walker manages to tear off Sam's wings during the scuffle. When Sam later simply tells Torres to keep the wrecked wing harness, it seems pretty clear that Torres will eventually fix them, especially given how interested he seemed in doing so when they got a bit banged up in the first episode. Plus, it'll definitely be a somewhat more believable origin story than in the comics, where he got his superpowers by being genetically spliced with Sam's trained Falcon Redwing. Perhaps now that Sam seems more intent on picking up the shield and the Captain America name like Steve intended, this next episode will see the swooping entrance of a brand new Falcon to fight by the Captain's side. And hopefully wearing something a little more flattering than the weird, extremely low-cut green and orange V-neck he wears in the comics. I mean, seriously, Torres, of all the places to find inspiration for your costume, you had to go with Sam's discarded duds? Oh well, no accounting for taste. Oh boy, time for endless what's in the box jokes. Well, from all the mid-90s psycho thriller fans anyway. But seriously, Sam receiving a package from Wakanda, delivered courtesy of Bucky at the end of the episode, is exciting for a multitude of reasons. The episode itself, of course, has to be an absolute tease about it, as it doesn't show us the contents just yet, but comic fans have a few good guesses. The most likely answer is that it's a brand new set of wings, considering that in the comics, Sam's original wing harness was actually made by none other than King T'Challa, the Black Panther himself, as a favor to Steve. And he didn't do it just once, but twice, as he once supplied Sam with a set of hard light holographic wings that he used for a while. So really, Sam getting some sweet new gear from Wakanda makes perfect sense and is a nice little nod to the comic book origins of his flight ability. Of course, there could be something else in there as well, like, perhaps, a Captain America-inspired costume more akin to what he wore in the comics when he took the name after Steve Rogers was forced to retire? I mean, okay, I'm not sure how keen the Wakandan people would be on sitting around and making an outfit decked in stars and stripes, but it feels more likely to me than Sam taking time off between shield throwing and boat repairs to break out a needle and thread. Oh well, we'll just have to wait and see in the next episode. Oh, mid-credits teaser scenes, how I missed thee! Stuff like this is a good reason not to turn off your TV right as the credits roll, folks. Because if you stick around, your presence is rewarded with the ominous sight of John Walker diligently hammering away at a brand new shield in his man cave like a bitter, less brilliant Tony Stark. And using his old medals of honor as decoration. It's definitely meant to evoke a darker turn for the character, but it's also a nice nod to John's tendency in the comics to often switch shields, and even decorate them in various interesting ways. Among his many shields, we have an energy shield, and even one that is kind of hilariously shaped like an eagle, but one particular standout is his spiky star shield. Not only was it bladed for those moments when good old Johnny gets some of his gorier urges, but it was also engraved with the names of soldiers who lost their lives in terrorist attacks, marking the shield as being intended both as an homage to their legacy and a tool for revenge for lives lost. John likes making a statement with his shields, that's for sure. Now, I just hope he'll tape a picture of Lamar to the inside of one. like he did in the comics, with a picture of his parents after they were killed by the terrorist watchdogs group. I'm not crying, you are! Batroc is back, the Flag Smashers are gearing up for their biggest attack yet, Sam has received new gear, and John is preparing to re-enter the fray. Seems like we're in for one massive bang of a finale. I'm certainly on pins and needles until next week, that's for sure. So, did everyone have a good break in episode 5? All rested up and ready to go? Good, because now we're in for the finale, and what a finale it is. Every major conflict in the series comes to a head as everyone heads for their final showdowns, identities are reclaimed, and knuckle sandwiches are handed out like candy on Halloween. And speaking of candy, it seems there's still room amidst the chaos for just a few Easter eggs, which of course I am all too happy to point out for you. Here we go. Makeover, makeover. You get a makeover. You get a makeover. Everyone gets a makeover. Yeah, we'll start off simple with one that is going to be absolutely no surprise to Marvel Comics readers, but is still a very nice touch simply for how comic book accurate it is. After Sam received the strange package from Wakanda at the tail end of the last episode, theories were flying all over the place as for what would be in it. But one stood out as more likely than the rest. Namely, that it was not just a set of new wings after John tore them apart during the scuffle with Sam and Bucky, but also a brand spanking new outfit to go with the name he's reclaiming. And yep, that's exactly what it was. Sam's new Captain America outfit isn't just a nice bit of red, white, and blue to match up with the shield though. It's almost an exact page-to-screen version of the outfit that Sam wore when he became Captain America in the comics, after some shenanigans with Steve's super serum getting extracted from his body caused him to rapidly age and being forced to retire. Similarly, Walker also gets some new duds to show off at the end of the episode, though in his case it's really more of a paint job, going from the blue of the Captain America he was pretending to be, and to the more familiar black that he wears as the more morally ambiguous US agent, a name he finally actually takes up in this episode under the insistence of Valentina. We still don't know who she's working for though, so we might not have seen the last of Walker just yet. Speaking of Sam and his new outfit, someone over at the Marvel writing room is clearly all too aware of memes surrounding the character. Aside from the return of the humorous Black Falcon gag from episode 2, referencing that Sam was the first black superhero to not have the word black as part of his hero name, we have one reporter excitedly asking if Sam becoming Captain America means that he should now be referred to as Captain Falcon. Now, this isn't just a reporter asking a silly question. It's been a bit of a meme in the Marvel Comics fandom ever since Sam first took over as the Captain. For the non-gamers in the audience, the reason the name Captain Falcon comes up so much is because it belongs to a character from the cult Nintendo racing game series F-Zero, though nowadays he's probably more famous for his appearances in the party fighting game series Super Smash Bros., where he's appeared in every entry. The character's pretty popular among gamers for his hilarious over-the-top calls of attacks like Falcon Punch and Falcon Kick, and I don't know guys, I see Sam doing an awful lot of punching and kicking in this episode. Marvel, listen, add some flames and have Sam yell out the attack names and you'll strike gold. And then a bunch of people will immediately start mapping out every single one of his fighting moves and argue about where he belongs on the tier list. With those wings, I imagine he'll have a hell of a recovery move. Alright, those last two were easy ones, but hold up, there's a couple of more sneaky ones in here as well. Once our heroes screw up the Flag Smashers' plans to attack the GRC, it doesn't take very long for everything to devolve into an all-out brawl, which, when you have a bunch of fanatics with super soldier serum, quickly gets destructive and awesome to behold. In the midst of the fight, Carly, who has otherwise been a fairly different character to the supervillain Flag Smasher that she's based on, who was originally a middle-aged man by the name of Carl Morgenthau, decides to give us one last shout-out to her namesake when she pulls a parking meter out of the ground and starts swinging it as a weapon as if it were a big old mace and goes to town on Bucky with it. Why is this significant, you ask? Because between all the weapons Carl has used in his flag-smashing endeavors in the comics, his most famous weapon was indeed a mace. Well, a mace of the big ol' medieval spiked ball variety, that is, but hey, you don't usually just find those lying around on the street or at the local grocery store, you know? A girl's gotta work with what's at hand. And either way, seeing the Flag Smasher swing something resembling a mace at anyone who's called themselves Captain America at any point is a delight. Now, speaking of the Flag Smashers, a bunch of them have been named, but not many of them have been all that significant that the names have really stuck out or been worth remembering. That is, except for Nico, and look at how being a named but minor character in an MCU property turned out for him. But there is one member that repeatedly gets called out in this episode, Lennox. Not that it's a completely unheard of name, but it is unusual enough that it might ring a bell to anyone who's read any Marvel comics taking place back when John Walker called himself the Super Patriot and had a team of sidekicks regularly attack him posing as supervillains calling themselves the Bold Urban Commandos, so that he could show the world that he was a much better patriotic hero than Captain America. One of those commandos was our now dearly departed Lamar. But the other two were named Jerome Johnson and Hector Lennox, who later became the supervillain duo calling themselves Left-Winger and Right-Winger when John became the new Captain America and Lamar became Battlestar. Okay, granted, the character in the Flag Smashers doesn't get to do much and has no real confrontations with Walker in the show, but a character having a name like Lennox appearing in a show where John is a major character doesn't seem like a coincidence to me. Though, this just begs the question, where the heck Jerome Johnson has been this whole time? Hopefully not in the prisoner transport because, well, you know. The show may be over, but its impact on the MCU is not. We have a new captain, and new players on both the sides of angels and devils to worry about. Not to mention that the world is only slowly beginning to fix itself. And that still leaves the question of what Loki has been getting up to, which we'll find out in about a month and a half.